sweetheart. What are you doing here?
Just grabbing coffee before my shift. Don't make a thing of it, Mom.
This is how we start our conversation. And I told her, I don't see a coffee. And where is your car? Dario needed it. His is having trouble. It's fine. For how long? A few weeks. That's not a few weeks problem. That's a what happened to my daughter problem. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'd really love to see how far this story has reached and connect with people from all around the world. I never thought a handful of quarters could break my heart. It was a Tuesday, the kind of unremarkable afternoon that slips through your fingers without a trace. I had driven to the Millbrook Mall to return a cardigan I'd bought on impulse, the soft blue kind that looked lovely on the mannequin and wrong on me. By the time I got it home, I was in no particular hurry. Retirement had taught me to walk slowly and notice things, which I suppose is what saved us both in the end. The food court smelled the way it always did, warm. Grease, sugared pretzels, and the ghost of 1,000 lunches eaten in a hurry. It was noisy and bright, filled with the ordinary chaos of a Wednesday afternoon. Teenagers slouched over their phones. A young father jostling a stroller with one hand and holding a paper cup with the other. A cluster of elderly women, sharing something that made them all laugh at once. I was moving toward the escalator when I saw her. I would have recognized those shoulders anywhere, even hunched, even trying to disappear. There is a particular geometry to your own child, the angle of the neck, the way the hands move that your body knows before your brain catches up. She was seated at a small round table near the edge of the food court, alone, her back partially to me. Her hands were moving very carefully over the table's surface, and it took me a moment to understand what she was doing. She was counting coins, sorting them into small, deliberate stacks. My daughter's name is Renata. She was 39 years old. She had grown up in a house full of books and bread, baking on Sundays, and a mother, me, Frances, who believed in reading every contract before you signed your name. She had gone to university on a partial scholarship and worked her way through the rest. She had laughed loudly, loved fiercely, and once told me that she wanted a life too full to be tidy. That was Renata. The woman at the table wore a faded grocery store uniform, the name tag hanging slightly crooked on the chest. Her hair was pulled back with the kind of carelessness that came, not from confidence, but from exhaustion. Her face, when I finally saw it, was thinner than I remembered, and there were shadows beneath her eyes that no amount of sleep seemed to have touched. She counted the coins again. Then she pushed a few aside, looked at what remained, and pressed her lips together in a way that told me everything before she said a single word. I walked toward her slowly, the way you approach someone standing too, close to a ledge. Renata! She looked up, and something flickered across her face, surprise, relief, and then a very quick and careful arrangement of composure, like someone tidying a room before letting in a guest. Mom? She smiled. What are you doing here? I sat down without being invited. Returning a cardigan. What are you doing here? Just getting a coffee before my shift. I looked at the empty table. No coffee. Where's Sophia? Her daughter, my granddaughter, was 5 years old and rarely out of arm's reach of her mother. Renata's face shifted just slightly. She's with Dario and his mom. They took her to the park. A pause. She loves the swings. Dario? Her husband of 7 years. His mother, Conchetta. Where's your car, sweetheart? Another pause, half a second too long. Dario needed it today. His has been having trouble. How long? She looked at her hands. A few weeks. And how did you get here? The bus, Mom. It's fine. Really? I looked at her shoes. They were worn at the toe, the laces fraying at the ends. I looked at her hands, at the coins, still clenched in one palm, the red marks they had left on her skin. I looked at my daughter, who had once haggled confidently with a car salesman and drafted her own lease agreements, because she didn't trust anyone else to get the details right. Renata! I reached across the table and took her hand. It was cold despite the warmth of the afternoon. Tell me what's happening. She pulled away and stood too quickly, knocking the chair back with a scrape of plastic on tile. I have to go. I'll miss my bus. She gathered the coins without looking at me. When she finally met my eyes, there was something in them I had not seen since she was 7 years old and had broken a neighbor's window and was too frightened to tell anyone. It was not the fear of punishment. It was something older and quieter, the fear of being seen. Please, Mom, she whispered. Don't push. Not today. I let her go. But I did not let it go. A mother never does. That is not weakness, and it is not meddling. It is a different kind of love, the kind that keeps its mouth shut in the moment and stays awake all night, turning every detail over in its hands until the truth begins to take shape. I drove home and sat at my kitchen table until the light changed and the neighborhood went quiet. Then I opened a notebook and began to write down every small thing that had troubled me over the past year. The missed holiday, the phone calls that seemed rushed and monitored, the time Renata had started to tell me something on the phone, and then stopped abruptly and said, with unmistakable brightness, "Oh, Dario just got home, I've got to go." The pages filled faster than I expected. By the time I went to bed, I already knew I would not be waiting for my daughter to come to me. I would find the truth myself. 2 days later, Renata agreed to meet me for lunch near the supermarket where she worked. She arrived early, I knew she would, and she had chosen a corner booth, her back against the wall, facing the door. I noticed that immediately. I had raised a woman who used to sit with her back to rooms because she trusted the world at her shoulders. Now she needed to see every entrance. Her phone lay face down on the table. She checked it twice before I'd even unfolded my napkin. "You're watching the time," I said. "Dario expects me home by 3. "Why?" She picked at the edge of her paper napkin. "He just does." I folded my hands. "Renata, I'm not here to judge you or to tell you what you're doing wrong. I'm here because you are my daughter, and something is wrong, and I love you enough to sit in an uncomfortable booth and ask you directly." I paused. "Whatever it is, you don't have to protect me from it." For a long moment, she was silent. She looked at the table. She looked at the door. She looked at her phone. And then, slowly, the way tension leaves a body that has been holding itself rigid for too long, her shoulders dropped. "It didn't happen all at once," she said quietly. "That's what I want you to understand first. It happened in pieces, and each piece seemed small enough that I kept thinking, this isn't a problem. I can handle this." She told me it had begun about 18 months ago, when Dario announced he was leaving his position at the shipping company to pursue a business venture with an old friend. The income drop would be temporary, he said. They just needed to be disciplined with money while things got off the ground. Concetta, his mother, who had always had a gift for making her suggestions, feel like consensus proposed that the two households merge their finances to cut redundancy. Renata had been exhausted at the time. Sophia had just started kindergarten, and the adjustment had been harder than anyone anticipated. The early mornings, the pickup schedules, the paperwork. She had trusted them. Of course she had trusted them. They were her family. She signed forms she did not read carefully enough. The joint account became, in practice, Dario's account. Renata's paychecks were deposited directly and seemed to vanish into a current she couldn't follow. When she asked where the money went, Conchetta told her she worried too much, that managing household finances was a full-time job on its own, that she should be grateful not to carry that burden. Then came the credit cards. Conchetta had sat Renata down at the kitchen table one evening and explained gently, and at length, that Renata had a habit of impulsive spending that was undermining their shared goals. Renata had been so caught off guard. She had always been careful with money, meticulous even, that she hadn't found the words to argue. She handed over the cards. To keep the peace. And then the rules, Renata said, her voice quieter now. No cash. No purchasing anything without checking first. If I needed something for the house or for Sophia, I had to ask. She paused. And if I questioned it, they said I was being ungrateful, that Dario was sacrificing everything for the family, that Sophia needed stability. I felt something go cold inside me, the particular cold that is not fear, but its older, steadier cousin. And Sophia? Renata's jaw tightened. That's when I knew I couldn't leave. Conchetta told me once not as a threat. She was very careful about that. She never made it sound like a threat. She told me that courts look very closely at mothers who struggle to manage money, that there were people who could help Dario pursue full custody, if it ever came to that. I pressed my palms flat against the table to keep my hands still. Have they threatened you directly? No. She shook her head slowly. They never say it out loud, but they remind me, often. They keep all the documents, Mom. Sophia's birth certificate, the bank statements, the house papers, my passport. She looked up at me. If I need anything, I have to ask permission to access my own life. The waitress came to refill our water glasses. Renata straightened instantly, her expression reorganizing itself into something pleasant and unremarkable. When the waitress left, she leaned forward and dropped her voice until I could barely hear her. Mom, I feel like I'm disappearing. And every time I think about pushing back, I hear Conchetta's voice reminding me what I could lose. Her eyes filled. I can't lose Sophia. I reached across the table and held her hand, and this time she did not pull away. Renata, I made my voice very steady and very clear. What you're describing is not a difficult marriage. What you're describing is a cage. She nodded, slowly, like someone confirming a diagnosis they had already suspected. I know, she whispered. I think I've known for a while. I just didn't know how to say it out loud. There was still something she wasn't telling me. I could feel it in the slight stiffness that remained, even after she had given me so much. A mother learns to read the pauses between words, the places where the sentence almost goes somewhere and then turns back. Renata, I said gently, where are you sleeping? The question landed between us like something dropped from a great height. She didn't answer right away. She looked at the table, then she looked at me, and her eyes were emptied of everything except the weight of whatever she was about to say. In the laundry room, she said. They moved me in there 3 months ago. Conchetta said it was temporary, that it was better for Sophia's routine if she wasn't confused by too much coming and going. I could not speak. There's a cot, she added quickly, as if the presence of a cot made it reasonable. And a lamp. It's fine, Mom. It's not what it sounds like. But it was exactly what it sounded like. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping back loudly enough that a man 2 booths away looked up. I want to see it, I said. Mom, please. Now? She stared at me with the particular fear of someone who has lived so long under someone else's surveillance that being seen by anyone feels dangerous. Then she exhaled. Okay, she said, but carefully. We have to be very careful. I did not confront anyone. I want to be clear about that. Anger would have felt like justice. It would have given me something to do with the cold, trembling fury that had taken up residence in my chest from the moment Renata said the words laundry room. I wanted to drive to that house and stand in that driveway and say every true thing out loud in a voice loud enough to reach every neighbor on the street. But people like Conchetta are prepared for anger. They collect it. They file it away and present it later as evidence that they were the reasonable ones all along. I had lived long enough to know that the loudest response is rarely the most useful one. So I drove home in silence and I thought. The next morning, I called Renata before her shift. I kept my voice practical, the way I used to when she was a teenager, and something required a clear head from both of us. I need you to keep doing exactly what you've been doing, I told her. She was quiet for a moment. Mom, I can't keep. I know. That's why you have to hold on just a little longer. I paused. The most dangerous moment is when someone realizes they're losing control. If they suspect anything, they will tighten their grip. I need them to feel comfortable, confident, careless. A long silence. You're scaring me. I know. Trust me anyway. After I hung up, I spread my notebook pages across the dining table and looked at everything I had written. The pattern was not subtle. Once you could see the whole of it laid out together. The financial isolation had come first, then the physical confinement, then the slow, careful work of making Renata doubt her own judgment. And threading through all of it, like a wire, was Sophia the point of greatest vulnerability, the place where Renata would fold every time. This was not a family in conflict. This was a system designed to extract compliance. I made my first call to a woman named Pauline Voss, whom I had known through my years of work in legal advocacy before I retired. She specialized in family law and had a reputation for being both thorough and unflappable. What do you call it? I asked her. When a spouse controls all finances, removes access to documents, isolates the other parent from outside support, and uses the child as leverage? She did not hesitate. Financial abuse and coercive control, taken very seriously when documented. Good, I said, because I intend to document it. My second call was to a private investigator I had used once before, on a matter connected with my late sister's estate. His name was Douglas Farr, and he was methodical, quiet, and entirely without interest in drama, exactly what I needed. I need documentation of living conditions, daily patterns, and access to a minor, I told him. Clean and quiet. Understood, he said. Within the week, the documentation began to arrive. Photographs of the laundry room from outside the window, the cot pressed against the wall, a single bare bulb overhead, Renata's folded clothes stacked in a plastic bin because there was no closet. Time-stamped. The outdoor temperature logged each night, several of them below 40 degrees. Then video Conchetta entering the laundry room while Renata was at work, opening the bin, searching through the clothing, removing a folded envelope from the pocket of a jacket, an envelope Renata had told me she'd hidden there, a small amount of cash she had managed to set aside from tips, and counting it slowly on the cot before pocketing it. Her voice, captured clearly, "You can't keep secrets in a family, Renata." Then the financial records. Renata had signed a limited access authorization over a year ago, a routine document, she thought, allowing Dario to handle some bill payments during a busy stretch. Someone had altered it. The scope had been expanded. The language changed. Her signature appeared on account modifications she had never authorized, on transfers. she had never made on a consolidation of their joint assets into accounts held in Dario's name alone. And then the house. The house Renata and Dario had purchased together was being rented. The property was listed under a property management company Dario had registered. The rental deposits were going to an account Renata did not know existed. Month after month, while she counted coins at the food court, the last piece of evidence was the hardest. A recording audio of Conchetta speaking to Sophia one evening, while Renata worked a late shift. Conchetta's voice was kind. That was what made it so difficult to hear. She was not cruel in her tone. She was warm and careful, the way someone is when they are teaching a child something they want to stick. Mama has to work so much because she has trouble being responsible, Conchetta said. We help her by keeping things organized. Sophia's voice, small and careful. Does Mama love me? Of course she does, my love. She just doesn't always know how to show it. I closed the file. I sat very still for a long moment. Then I called Pauline. I have everything, I said. Tell me what we do next. The morning of the emergency hearing was still and cool, the kind of morning that feels suspended before something shifts. I picked Renata up at 5:30. She was waiting at the corner, 1 block from the house, so no one would see her get into my car. She wore a dark green dress, the only formal piece of clothing she had kept, tucked beneath winter things in the bottom of the bin, and she kept smoothing the fabric with her hands. As I drove, as if trying to press herself into something presentable. You look fine, I told her. I don't feel fine. I know. Feel it anyway. That's allowed. Pauline met us at the courthouse steps. She was a compact woman, with a steady gaze and the kind of posture that suggests she has never in her life been caught off balance. She shook Renata's hand and looked at her directly. You're not going to have to do this alone, she said. All you have to do today is tell the truth. I'll do the rest. Dario and Conchetta arrived with their attorney, a man named Hewitt, who wore a nice suit and had the look of someone accustomed to making things go away quietly. Conchetta wore muted colors and a composed expression. She nodded at Renata with the patient benevolence of someone who has never done a single wrong thing in their life. Dario looked tired, but his jaw was set. He thought I could see it, that this was a conversation he could manage. In the conference room, Pauline placed a single thick folder on the table and opened it without fanfare. Photographs first. The laundry room, the cot, the bin of clothing, the lamp, temperature logs. Then the video of Conchetta searching Renata's things and removing the envelope. Then the financial documents, the altered authorization, the unauthorized transfers, the rental income diverted from the marital property. Then the audio transcript, with the relevant section underlined in red. Pauline did not raise her voice once. This is not a difficult marriage, she said, with the calmness of someone reading a weather report. What we have documented here is financial abuse, unlawful exclusion of a co-owner from marital property, falsification of financial documents, and a sustained pattern of coercive control with a minor used as leverage. Hewitt had gone very still. Dario was leaning forward, his confidence dissolving in real time. Conchetta's expression did not change, but her hands, clasped on the table, tightened. This isn't accurate, Conchetta said finally. We were helping her. Renata struggles with. The recordings are time-stamped, Pauline said pleasantly. The document alterations have been analyzed by a handwriting expert who is prepared to testify. The rental income is traceable through public records. She paused. We are happy to present all of this to the judge. Hewitt asked to speak with his clients privately. They were gone for 11 minutes. When they came back, His jaw was set differently, resigned rather than strategic. "My clients are open to settlement," he said. "So are we," said Pauline. "We have a proposal." In the hearing itself, which followed, Renata stood before the judge and spoke. Her voice shook at first, shook visibly, audibly, the way a voice does when it has been kept quiet for too long and is finding its register again. But she did not stop. She described the laundry room. She described the coins. She described Sophia's face the last time she had been allowed to put her to bed, which had been 11 days earlier. She described what it felt like to need permission to look at your own bank account. The judge listened without expression. He looked at the evidence. He looked at Conchetta, who was now sitting very quietly with her hands in her lap. "Based on the documentation presented," he said, "I am granting a temporary emergency order awarding primary custody to the mother, effective immediately, with supervised visitation for the father pending review. A temporary restraining order is issued preventing interference with the mother's finances or access to the child." The gavel came down. It was a small sound for something so large. Outside the courtroom, Conchetta tried to speak. "This is not finished," she said, with the voice of someone accustomed to having the last word. Pauline turned to face her. "The financial audit begins next week," she said. "If you'd like to add anything to the record, now would be the time." Conchetta said nothing. I held Renata's arm as we walked out into the open air. She was trembling so finely it was barely visible. "Is it real?" she asked. "It's real," I said. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong." "Something might," I told her, "because I have never believed in promising people certainty. But right now, in this moment, you won. Hold on to that." The settlement, finalized that afternoon, returned to Renata full legal and physical custody of Sophia. Dario was granted supervised visitation twice monthly, contingent on completion of a parenting program. The marital home was restored to Renata's name. All rental income collected during the period of unauthorized leasing was to be reimbursed. The falsified documents were nullified pending criminal review. Conchetta received a permanent no-contact order. When Dario signed the final pages, his hands were unsteady. He did not look at Renata. 2 officers escorted us to the house to retrieve Sophia and her belongings. Conchetta opened the door. She looked at the officers, then at Renata, then at me. Her expression had collapsed into something smaller than I'd ever seen it. Sophia appeared behind her, clutching a stuffed rabbit by one ear. When she saw Renata, her whole face transformed. "Mama!" She ran. Renata caught her and held her in a grip so fierce and complete that I had to look away. We packed quickly. There was not much. A few bags of clothing, a backpack of toys, the cot, which we took because it was Renata's and because leaving it felt wrong. Dario stood in the driveway, hands in his pockets. "I didn't mean for it to get like this," he said. Renata looked at him. Not with hatred, I had raised her better than that, but with a clarity that was, in its own way, more devastating. "You chose it," she said. "Every single day, you chose it." She buckled Sophia into the car seat herself. No one stopped her. Healing, in my experience, does not arrive like weather. It does not sweep in and change everything at once. It comes the way light comes into a room that has been shuttered for a long time, slowly, incrementally, the dust motes floating in the new brightness, before you've quite registered that the darkness has lifted. Renata moved back into the house with Sophia in early October. The first few weeks were quiet in a way that felt fragile, like new ice you test with your toe before trusting your weight. She checked the locks 3 times before bed. She flinched when her phone rang. But 2 weeks in, she rearranged the living room furniture. She put the couch closer to the window where the afternoon light came in. A small thing, an enormous thing. Sophia adapted gradually, and then all at once. She stopped asking every night where her mother would be sleeping. She began sprawling across her bed the way she had before, arms flung wide, taking up as much space as she pleased. One afternoon, I came by to find them both in the backyard. Renata kneeling in the dirt with a trowel, Sophia standing over her with her hands on her hips in the posture of a small foreman. "A pear tree," Renata said, not looking up. Sophia picked it. "I like pears," Sophia said with great authority. That winter, Renata was promoted to shift supervisor. She told me almost in passing, and I made her say it again properly. "That matters," I told her. "You were good at your job this whole time." That was always true. She was quiet for a moment. I think I forgot that for a while. One evening in early summer, we stood in the backyard watching Sophia chase fireflies in the long grass. The pear tree had put out leaves, small but determined. "I used to think I was weak," Renata said. "That if I'd been stronger, none of it would have happened. That's not how it works. I know that now. It happened because I trusted people who chose power over love. That's about them, not me." Sophia ran to us then, hands outstretched, a firefly pulsing once in her open palm before lifting away into the dark. "Did you see?" she said. "We saw," Renata told her. After Sophia fell asleep on Renata's lap that night, neither of us spoke for a long time. "Thank you," Renata said at last. "You did it," I said. "I just held the door." She shook her head. "You came to the food court. You sat down. You didn't look away. That's what mothers do," I said. She rested her head against my shoulder, the way she had when she was small, before she knew enough to be afraid of anything. Outside, the fireflies continued their slow, wordless signaling, each one a small light in the dark, gone almost as soon as it arrived, but real, undeniably real, for the instant it shone.